Let's get started. Hi, everyone. Hope you're doing well. Welcome back to Cafe Oleh. My name is Jay. I am both a volunteer with Nefesh B'Nefesh as well as made Aliyah myself with them just over 15 years ago. And here at Cafe Oleh, we go over the everyday Hebrew you need to not only live, but also succeed here in Israel, whether it's learning how to read your utility bills, going grocery shopping, following the news, whatever it takes. And we are always happy to get suggestions from you, what you want us to go over, whether we have done it in the past or we've never done it in the past, but that's relevant to you as current, past, potential Olim. What are your Hebrew concerns that otherwise prevent you from using it on a regular basis? We have a lot of people on the call, and so this is going to be a more frontal lecture workshop for those of you who haven't joined before. For those of you who would like a catch-up or to see what topics we've already discovered, please go to Nefesh B'Nefesh's YouTube channel. Just click on youtube.com, type in Cafe Oleh or Nefesh B'Nefesh. You'll be able to see all our previous lessons. This one will go up in the next 1 to 2 days. And likewise, a very important announcement. Next week will be our last lesson for 2021. We're going to take a short break to reconfigure some technical issues behind the scenes so that when we reconvene in 2022, very soon, coming up, it will be much easier to register for upcoming classes, and it will be and to get updates for it. So stay tuned. Next week will be our last class for 2021. You'll receive updates in your email from Nefesh B'Nefesh directly about upcoming sessions starting in January 2022. So with that, we had a request to go over basic everyday expressions when it comes to greetings and starting conversations, and also small talk. So we're going to break it into two. This week is going to be standard introductory phrases and expressions, but also ending phrases. And next week, we're going to get into a little bit more small talk. Oftentimes, that's very hard for people in general, regardless what language they speak, right? Is small talk, talking about the weather, pets, holidays, even politics, because it's Israel. So we're going to sort of demystify some of the words that you probably already know, right? How to ask how someone is doing, but maybe you don't know which one is appropriate at what time and to whom you're speaking, and in all sorts of other ways. So we're going to go through that this week. Next week will be small talk. As always, if you have any questions as I'm presenting, please write it in the Q&A button. You'll see Q&A at the bottom of your screen on the Zoom menu. If you have a question about anything else, a topic for future lessons, you want to critique my English, my Hebrew, my anything else, please write that in the chat box. There are a lot of you and just one of me, so it makes it easier for me to facilitate the coming questions that we get. So with that, I'm going to share my screen. Let's open that up. And we're going to start here. So as always, Hebrew on the right-hand side, transliteration in the middle, English on the left. You are welcome to screenshot this. You are welcome to old school pen and paper this, whatever is easiest for you. And likewise, this will be up on YouTube in the next few days, so you'll be able to watch it again whenever you like. You can pause it, you can take screenshots, whatever is easiest for you to follow along. So let's start. So the easiest is hi, right? Hi is very easy way to start a conversation in Hebrew. Just know that if you are chatting on an app or a messenger or anything like that, you will see often two ways to spell it, as you see here on the right, either with 1 or 2 yuds. It's the difference between hi and hey. Not much difference between that. If you have a difference between them, by all means, pick the one that's appropriate for you. Hi with 2 yuds is usually hi. Hey is usually 1 yud, but they're pretty interchangeable and you're not going to get in trouble using one or the other. They're both understood to mean hi, hey, anything like that. Okay, let's skip down to number 3. So I wrote shalom, right? Shalom, we all know. but there are different ways to say shalom, or at least what you're going to hear. And you've probably heard this before a lot. You've heard shalom, shalom, right? It goes up and down. That's a very classic one, how you say shalom to someone to start a conversation, or you see them from afar and you want to get their attention. That's a typical way to do it. The next way is often heard between close friends, maybe sometimes teenagers. It's a way to indicate it's someone who you want to see, you've expected to see, maybe you made plans with, but you haven't seen for a while, or you bumped into. It goes like this: Shalom, right? So shalom is the sort of catch-all, right? You can say that to a complete stranger. You can say that to someone you're expecting to see, someone you're looking forward to seeing, but shalom, that really drawn out second syllable, is like hello, just like we say that in English, right? It's really emphasizing, I'm really excited to see you. Okay, so either of those ways to say shalom, 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 are really nice ways to sort of, as they say, zhuzh up the word shalom, because we use it so much, it needs a little accessorizing to make it a little bit more interesting to hear. The next one is classic Israeli slang, and we've talked about this many times before. Classic Israeli slang means that it's likely coming from Arabic. Ahlan is short for the Arabic expression Ahlan wa Sahlan, which simply means welcome. Ahlan is a very nice, casual way to say hi to someone, regardless of their ethnicity. So you can say it to a Jew, to an Arab, whomever. It is casual though. Okay, so you're going to say this to a friend. You're going to say this to, it's not a formal setting word, right? So ahlan, or as I wrote it here in the transliteration, it's going to be like that long, elongated shalom. Ahlan. It's taking that same musical way of saying shalom with the Arabic word ahlan, right? So ahlan or shalom, either one works for just saying hi or hello. Okay, basics, but still important to know. Good morning, Bokertov. Bokertov, again, we've talked about the resh at the end of Boker. Bokertov, if you say Bokertov, it's completely all right. I taught Hebrew in the Nefesh B'Nefesh Hub last week at the end of Chanukah, and I relayed one of my favorite bits of info, of trivia here in Israel, factoid, if you will, that the chief meteorologist on Israeli radio, the most listened to newscast for decades, was an Anglo himself, and he would always end each one with Bokertov Yisrael. Okay, with the thickest American accent you can think of, and he was the chief meteorologist going to millions of radios across the country. So that's all to say, if you can't say Boker Tov, you can say Boker Tov, right? The resh, however you say it, everyone has a different accent here. It's a country of Olim, it's perfectly all right. Just know that it's Boker Tov, Boker, right? If the emphasis is on the second syllable, Boker is a cowboy, spelled the exact same way but pronounced differently. So Boker is morning. So just keep that in mind. You can certainly wish someone a good cowboy, but that's your own dynamic between the two of you. The next one, right? Often get asked, so there's good morning, good evening, good night. What about good afternoon? Well, we do have a way to say that. Sohoraim tovim. Sohoraim is noon or afternoon. It's an ambiguous period of time, just like afternoon kind of is as well in English. Sohoraim tovim, like I wrote here on the left in the notes, is really only used in formal situations. Think of a teacher and a student. Think of a seminar or a lecture. You would rarely say to a friend, Sohoraim tovim. It's just not, it's way too formal and over the top. So you're only going to hear it in that respect. The next one you'll hear quite a lot, Erev Tov. Erev Tov, again, can span a long period of time. Erev Tov can go from the very earliest of evenings. And now that it's winter here in Israel, it means that sunset is already at 4:30. So you can already be using Erev Tov quite early in the day. Erev Tov can go all the way till the middle of the night. Why? Because Erev Tov is what you use to say hi to someone when you're seeing them in the evening or at night. Okay, it's irregardless of when you're seeing them. So if I'm meeting up with a friend at 10 or 11 o'clock at night and our custom is to say good evening to each other, I would say Erev Tov. I wouldn't, because again, it's too formal for me. But just know that Erev Tov is used at the beginning of conversations when you're seeing someone in the evening or at night, right? You're going out for a late dinner date. Erev Tov is what you would wish them when you first meet them. When you sign off, right? When you are at the end of the date or the end of meeting up with a friend, or you're wishing someone on WhatsApp, have a good night, then you're going to use Laila Tov. Laila Tov, good night. Okay, so again, Erev Tov is always going to be used when you're saying hi to someone for the first time that evening, or wishing them when you meet them in the evening or at night. Laila Tov is only going to be used to sign off, to say goodbye. You're not going to say Laila Tov to someone right when you meet them for a late drink. Doesn't work like that. Okay, Laila Tov is only for saying goodbye at night, right? You're not gonna say Laila Tov at 10 in the morning. Okay, now let's get into some of the basics, right? First, we start off with hi, and then you get to how are you, just like in English. So let's start with the most formal. This one you probably know already. Ma shlomcha that you would say to a man, ma shlomech to a woman. Okay, or male or female, however it works. Ma shlomcha to a male, ma shlomech to a female. It's regardless of who you are as the speaker, it's to whom you are addressing, right? So ma shlomcha or ma shlomech. Okay. Now, if I was either chatting, like texting this, or replying to someone who asked me, and we're going to get to what the actual reply is for a second, I would then reply to them, ma shlomcha ata, to a male, or ma shlomech at, to a woman, right? So ma shlomcha, ma shlomech, and then I would reply to them, and then I would ask them out of politeness the same thing, and I would say ma shlomcha ata, or ma shlomech at. Okay, either way. But the point is, I'm referring it back to them in two ways. Both I'm acknowledging to whom I'm speaking by using the pronoun, right? Ata for a man, at for a woman. But because this is the most formal, I'm replying in kind, right? If someone starts a conversation with me with ma shlomcha, I will always reply ma shlomcha to that, or ma shlomech, depending on their gender. I'm not going to go down in formality after they use ma shlomcha, because this is the highest. The other ones you can play around with, and we're going to get to them in just a second. But just know, if someone asks you ma shlomcha or ma shlomech, it's good to reciprocate once you've answered them with the same level of formality, because it's the most polite, it's the most formal way of asking how someone is. Okay, now we have a whole bunch. These are some that you know, some of them you don't know. Before we get to actually answering them, there's other ways to start off a conversation of how someone is. All right, so let's start with number 12, Manishma. So Manishma is an interesting one, because Manishma we use all the time. It literally means what is heard, right? It's a little bit of slang. We use this one, I would say, as the neutral greeting. And it's so neutral, it actually becomes negative after a while. I've had multiple experiences in jobs, in social settings, where Manishma is kind of like it's saying in English, how are you doing? And then they're asking that as a way to start a conversation constructively criticizing something you did or didn't do, right? So this is all to say Manishma is so neutral in tone, in meaning, in context. It sometimes can actually be bad, right? I typically won't start a conversation with Manishma, because it's unless the point is to make it sort of as unemotional of a conversation as possible. So keep that in mind if you use Manishma. Yes, it is more contemporary Hebrew, but it's not the most endearing, engaging, ebullient way to start a conversation. Even if you say it, bouncy, like Manishma, it's you'll usually, I would only say it like that if it was the second or third round of questions. Another important context clue there. Besides that, Manishma isn't always the best way to greet someone because they may assume something bad is about to say, like I just mentioned. Like in other cultures in the Middle East and in the Mediterranean, typically you'll ask multiple times how someone is doing. Right, you may even answer, but then you're going to also ask them again. So it could go 2 or 3 rounds of asking, "Ma shlomcha, ma shlomech, tov, ma nishma, ma koreh." You're going to keep doing this a few more times. That's a cultural thing. It's not avoiding the question. It's making sure the other person feels as comfortable as you are trying to make them. And so it's not trying to avoid something. Know that it's meant to be friendly, engaging, outgoing when you ask it multiple times. It just like in other cultures in the Middle East, we don't get right down to business. So keep that in mind. If someone keeps asking you after you answer them, and you'll see some of the answers, we'll get it in a second, they're not trying to avoid having a deeper conversation. It's just sometimes you need to do a few rounds of asking how you're doing. Okay, so Manishma we just talked about. Here's another one. This one is a great one, informal, is manyanim. Manyanim is the slang way to say maha inyanim. Inyanim are interests, not as in the bank, but interest as in something you're interested in. Inyan is an interest in something. So manyanim is the quick way to say it. Remember, we've talked about this a lot in Hebrew. The more we can condense words and use fewer syllables, the better. Hebrew, like all Semitic languages, loves fewer syllables, fewer letters, the less of a need to open your mouth. That may sound counterintuitive, but the less you can open your mouth, the better. So manyanim already cuts down on several syllables. It's a really nice way to casually ask someone how they're doing. Not casually in the sense of you don't really care, but casual in the sense of it's a good friend. So manyanim, right? Again, that sing song, that up and down indicates a genuine interest in the person. Okay, and we have some other ones here. Makore. Makore is one of my favorites. What's happening? Right? Kore is happens or happening. So makore, what's up? What's going on? There's a whole bunch of other ones here I don't have. There's echolech or maholech, what's going on? There's hakol tov. Number 15, hakol tov. You would ask it as a question mark. All good. Those of you who are from the UK and you ask, you okay? This is the more literal way to say it. This is the American way to say it, but you could also make it British. Hakol tov. You can answer however you would like. Another one, machadash. Machadash, what's new? This can both be a follow-up to asking all those other questions about ma shlomcha, manishma, manyanim, or it can just be on its own. Machadash. And then a very good one, very contemporary slang one, which is manish. Manish is short for manishma, row 12, right? So instead of saying manishma, we've taken out a syllable and it's just simply manish. Manish. Now, we've talked about slang at length before because I always think that's important when learning a new language, and especially because that's what we use so much on everyday language in everyday conversation here in Israel. Manish is not just really good Hebrew because, again, it's condensing a word, but it's understood what it means. Right? If I hear manish, I'm not going to get it mixed up with anything else. I know they mean manishma. The ish at the end of the word, or ush at the end of the word, is a type of slang. Think like Pig Latin in English, or other ways or abw in English, where we simply add the ish or ush at the end of words to make them sort of cutesy poo. Right? The classic one from a satire skit here in Israel is from Eretz Nehederet. Israel's version of Saturday Night Live is a bar mitzvush or bat mitzvush, It's actually, it was a bat mitzvush in the original skit, but it's become a bar mitzvush as well, right? So anything that's cute, anything that you want to make cute or show some endearment to in slang, you would add ush or ish to. So if you wish someone manish, if you ask someone manish, it's someone you are at the very least acquaintances with, and you sort of can shoot the breeze with them. It's not any serious conversation for sure. It could also be a friend. It's a great way to start a conversation, but again, it's very contemporary, it's very slang. Keep that in mind with whom you're using that. Okay, we've gone through all these questions. Let's actually answer some of them, right? So someone asks you, ma shlomcha, ma shlomech, manishma, manyanim, any of these, what can you answer? And let's give you some options here. So there's quite a lot. So I'm going to go as slowly as possible. A lot of these you probably know, but it's good to do a review. So the very first one is besedel. Now, remember, the resh, however you want to pronounce it, is fine. Besedel is the typical way you would hear it. You can also say beseder. We've talked about beseder is actually slang in Hebrew. It's acknowledging, some people would say mocking American accents. Beseder is also a way to say it. If I really want to emphasize I'm okay, or maybe I want to sarcastically say I'm okay, and someone asks me, hey Jay, Manishma, I would go beseder, right? Really sort of, I'm either really good or I'm really not good. And either way, beseder is a good way to say it. But besedo is fine, or besedo gamul. Gamul means in this context completely or fully, right? So besedo gamul, I'm very well. Instead of just well, I'm very well. Okay. Tov is another way to do it. Remember, tov in, sorry, I'm just making this masculine as I see it was not, and I wrote it in that. Remember that Hebrew is a very mathematical language. It's a very logical language, with the exception, it's very much 8th grade algebra, and happy to always explain that again if you need to. But there's one major exception in Hebrew that defies logic, and that is adverbs, right? You all know what adverbs are. It's not just I walk, but I walk quickly. Quickly is an adverb. In English, it's very clear to know when an adverb, when you're using an adverb, because it usually ends in ly, right? Quick is the adjective. Quickly is an adverb. It modifies the verb as opposed to an adjective, which modifies a noun. We have this in many other languages. Those of you who speak Spanish, rapidamente, right? Mente at the end of a word is also indicating an adverb. Hebrew doesn't have a uniform way of creating adverbs. So why do I say that? Because just like in English, you'll see people who reply to you, I'm doing, either say good or well, right? Because they're asking, how are you doing? To say it correctly, you would say, I am doing well, right? In proper English, because we're using a verb, we're modifying the verb with an adverb. In Hebrew, tov is both an adjective and an adverb. So me replying to someone who asks me, ma shlomcha, and I say tov, is perfectly all right, because it means both good and well. Okay, so tov in this case is a adverb. Ma shlomcha, tov, or ani betov, right? However, it's best for you to understand, but tov gets translated as well here, or I'm good, if for those of you who that's acceptable English. Okay, let's say I want to bring it up. I can say tov or bitov. Ani bitov is another way to say I'm doing well. I can say tov me'od, right? Me'od means very. So if I'm tov me'od, I'm very good, or I'm very well. Now let's get into some superlatives, because this is a very easy way to up or ramp up any thing that you're talking about in Hebrew. So instead of saying I'm good, maybe I want to say I was better. I'm better because, let's say, God forbid, I was sick or something else. Now I'm doing better. Yoter tov, right? Someone asked me, hey Jay, ma shlomcha? Yoter tov, toda. Yoter tov. Ani yoter tov. I am better. Thank you. toda. Okay, so yoter tov, great way to say it. And if I wanted to say, not in the context of necessarily answering how am I doing, but if we're already doing superlatives, so good, better, best. Best is either said achi tov or hatov beyoter. Okay, so already you know how to do superlatives, very easy in Hebrew. To say better or more good, which is what better means, right? If I want to do the middle between good and best, I simply take the word yoter, which means more, and then the adjective or adverb I'm trying to modify. So I'm not just tov, I'm yoter tov. I'm not just good, I'm better. And if I want to go from better to best, I either use the word achi, and then the adjective tov, or hatov beyoter. Tov with the prefix ha, and then followed by beyoter. Either of these ways make the most, the best. Okay. So for those of you who also wanted to learn superlatives, now you know how to do it. Very easy in Hebrew. Adverbs, not so much. Okay, so let's go through some more answers to how are you doing. Toda, toda rabba. So if I want to say beseder or beseder gamur toda, I'm doing well, I'm okay, thank you. Very nice way to say it, just like you would in English, right? So follow up however I'm going to reply with the word toda or toda rabba. Toda rabba, thank you very much. Okay, it's just the next level up. Let's go to some other ones. Akol tov, that's a good way to answer. Hey, Jay, Manishma. Yeah, akol tov. Akol tov toda. Everything's good. It's all good. This could be neutral because you don't want to get into it, or, God willing, everything is good and there's nothing to complain about, at least as the introductory to a conversation, right? So akol tov, everything is good. This one, I'm sure many of you are familiar with, Baruch Hashem. Baruch Hashem, blessed is God. You will hear this used by both religious and non-religious people. By religious people, it's not meant to be sarcastic. By non-religious people, it can be both, everything is Baruch Hashem, or it could be sarcastic. So that's sometimes a context clue into what the person actually is feeling, which is also why we ask multiple times at the beginning of conversations how someone is doing, right? All those Manishma, Manyanim, Makore, right? Baruch Hashem. We also know Baruch Hashem is a filler reply, standard reply for more observant folk in anything that happens, right? Let's go through some more ways to say beseder or tov. That's a little bit better vocabulary. Now, again, I'm not a human dictionary. There are many more that I did not include here. This is just a sample of the many, many, many ways in Hebrew to say good or something positive. You can look these all up. I'm going to scroll through these, not fast, but fast enough that you can look them up on your own back on YouTube in a few days. Okay, so let's go through some of those ways you can reply to, hey Jay, Manishma. Madhim, toda, amazing. I'm doing amazing. Mehamem, shocking. I wouldn't necessarily reply to that initially to it. I would maybe reply to someone else's reply with mehamem or mehamem, as we would say again in more colloquial Hebrew. Marshim. Marshim is impressive, a great word to have under your belt. Nifla, nice. Nehedar, wonderful. Mitsuyan, excellent. Magniv. Magniv is slang. We usually use it only in slang. It literally means captivating. It comes from the same root as lignov, to steal. So lehagniv is to capture something. So magniv is literally captivating, but we translate it usually as awesome or cool. All these words are great adjectives you should use on a regular basis, or you can use. But again, we're still doing that interaction at that beginning. How are you doing? And replying to it, and replying to the other person's reply. Okay, so magniv. We have two very classic ones from Arabic, akhla and sababa. Akhla and sababa are both from slang, both from Arabic. They've become slang. catch-all answers to anything you want to say cool or awesome. I know there are some people out there who hate the reply cool. It's typically usually Europeans getting angry at Americans using the word cool. But I can assure you that Ahlan and Sababa are used all the time. They're catch-alls, easy to use, and they're interchangeable, right? Ahlan and Sababa, as opposed to the other words, and this is important, Ahlan and Sababa will never conjugate, right? Regardless of gender, regardless of who you're speaking about, it's always Ahlan and Sababa. All the other ones will conjugate based on gender and the amount of people involved. Okay, and finally, the last one is a great piece of slang you should always have because it is just classic Hebrew in all its forms. Chaval al hazman. If someone replies to you after you ask them Manishma and they say Chaval al hazman, it could either mean things are really bad or things are really good. Typically nowadays, in 2021, if someone replies Chaval al hazman, it's a positive thing, right? It's the bad of the 80s come 30 plus years later, 40 plus years later, right? So Chaval al hazman, or it's even shorter form, it's acronym Chavlaz or Chavlazi, making the acronym into an adjective, which is just classic colloquial Hebrew, can mean both something is bad or something's really good. In slang, it's something really good. In everyday Hebrew, it's an idiom for something really bad. It literally translates to too bad on the time. It's not understood as that. Chaval al hazman means something is bad, and in slang, it means something's really good. If I was at a restaurant and I wanted to say, and the waiter or waitress comes up and asks, how's the food? And it was really good, I could say to them, pashut chaval hazman. Wow, this is simply amazing. Okay, so that is yet another way to reply to someone who asks Manishma, Manyanim, Mashlumcha, Mashlumech, all those other ones. Okay, so let's say you've done a few rounds of this, right? So, hey Jay, Mashlumcha, Ani batov, Mashlumcha ata, Mitsuyan toda. Okay, you've done a few of these rounds. Maybe you'll do a few more. Hey, machadash, makore. You'll do it a few times, not with yourself like I just modeled for you, but have to model that at some point. How are you going to wrap up the conversation, right? Like I said, in a future session, we're going to go over the actual small talk, the meat of the conversation. But how do you wrap up a conversation? That's oftentimes a hard thing for people, not just because of the stereotype of taking 30 minutes to wish someone goodbye, but often they don't know how to say it. So here's a good way to say it. Let's say you just met someone for the first time, right? They introduce themselves. Hi, Ani Jay. And then I would say, Na'im me'od. Na'im me'od literally translates to it's very pleasant, but excuse me, we translate this more as it's very nice to meet you. There is a whole other way to say it. You could say Na'im me'od la'akir otcha to a man or to a woman. It's understood Na'im me'od is short for Na'im me'od la'akir otcha. It's very nice to meet you. Okay, it's not that we're being informal about meeting someone for the first time. This is just an easier, quicker way to say it with 2 words instead of 4. So Na'im me'od, this is not going to conjugate, by the way, row 39, regardless of gender. This is the other way to say, as opposed to Na'im me'od, which is it's nice to meet you, right? In the present, you are just meeting someone. Let's say you're wrapping up a conversation and you want to say, it's been nice getting to know you, or it's been nice to have met you. Samachti lahakir otcha, or samachti lahakir otach. Samachti is the past tense of the verb lismoach, which is to become happy, to be happy. So I was happy, lehakir, to know someone, otcha, you, direct object. So samachti lehakir otcha is a really nice way to say it's been a pleasure to get to make your acquaintance, right? Or it's been nice getting to know you, or it's nice to have met you. All of these are samachti lehakir otcha to a male, otach to a woman. So samachti lakir otcha or samachti lakir otach. Okay, oops, sorry. Got away there just 1 second. Sorry. Whoops, there we are. Okay. Right, so samachti lahakir otcha or otach. Now, let's another couple ways that you can both interject in a conversation, but also to wrap it up, just like with na'im me'od and samachti lahakir otcha. First off, eze yofi. Eze yofi is always a good way to reply to someone if it's positive. Right, so if someone says chaval hazman or nehedar or mitsuyan based on replying to how they're doing, you can say eze yofi, right? How lovely, but it's really that's great. Is the best way to translate it. And this is another parting expression. Eze yofi lirot otcha. Okay, I see that's spelled wrong. Before anyone jumps on me that it's misspelled, let me take care of that. Eze yofi lirot otcha to a man, eze yofi lirot otach woman, right? Eze yofi, how wonderful, it's been so great to see you. All right, if I bump into someone on the street, I can say this both at the beginning and the end. Eze yofi lirot otcha. It's so nice to see you. It's so great to see you. It's a really nice way to wrap up a conversation, just like you would in English, that expression. Okay. And now some parting ways to end the conversation, to follow up with some of those other expressions we just had. First one, we've talked about this one before, hatanug hu shali. Ta'anug, or as we would say in modern Hebrew, tanug, is pleasure, right? It's from the same root as oneg Shabbat. The oneg is the pleasure, the enjoyment of Shabbat. Ta'anug hu shali, the pleasure is mine. Right, a very charismatic, lovely expression in English. You can also translate into Hebrew. Just know that the word ta'anug and all of its conjugations in Hebrew are a little bit more illicit than the word pleasure in English. So you want to use this word very carefully. You're not going to use hatanugu shali with a new colleague or networking with someone where it's meant to be 100% platonic. This is not your expression to use, right? Save your charm for other expressions. There are those out there, but hatanugu shali is a little beyond, meaning a lot beyond platonic. So keep that in mind. If you are accustomed to using the expression, the pleasure is mine, some of these other ones will better translate in non-platonic platonic terms, excuse me. So if someone says, Eze yofi lirot otcha, or samachti lakir otcha, it's been lovely getting to know you, you can reply in a lot of different ways. You could say, in alma, alo davar, or in badma. All three of these, rows 45, 46, 47, all translate as it was nothing or don't mention it. This is another way to, by the way, to reply as you're welcome to something. If someone pays you a compliment or anything like that, or says thank you to you, these are all ways to reply instead of saying you're welcome, right? En alma, alo davar, and en ba'adma. All three of these are it was nothing, don't mention it. It's understood to mean my pleasure without saying literally my pleasure. But it's a little more neutral in meaning. So if someone's saying it was so nice to see you, I would not reply to this. I would also say gamotcha to a man or gamotach to a woman, but I would not reply this. This is it was nothing, don't mention it. It's that sort of brush off reply. For those of you who didn't know, very important, bevakasha also means please and you're welcome, right? So if someone says to you, toda rabba, you can reply bevakasha, and it means you're welcome. It's the most formal way to reply, but you could also reply if someone says toda to you, in alma, alo davar, in badma. But bevakasha also means you're welcome. You'll hear this a lot when you're in a restaurant and someone serves you, and they'll often say bevakasha, and they'll put it down like as in please, but also expecting your welcome, saying thank you. Okay. Two other ways to say you're welcome, or the pleasure is mine, or it was nothing, don't mention it, that are really nice ways to say it. First is bisimcha. Bisimcha translates as happily, right? Or with happiness. Again, remember what I said before, Hebrew has a hard time with adverbs. Bisimcha is understood to be an adverb, right? I'm trying to think of a sentence that I would say this. He agreed to the contract happily. I don't know when that would ever happen in Israel, especially, but hu hiskim lachozeh b'simcha. He agreed to the contract happily, with happiness. Okay, so if someone says to you after you say toda rabah or samachti lakir otcha, it's been nice getting to know you, and saying besimcha, it's saying the pleasure was mine, but in a platonic way. Maybe not platonic, but the point is it's not the over the top of pleasure, of ta'anug, excuse me. Besimcha is a really nice way to say to someone, you're welcome, without literally saying bevakasha, besimcha, happily so. And the last one is bekef. Bekef means literally, kef in Hebrew, it's actually not Hebrew, but kef means fun. So it means no worries, happily, all of those things is bekef. You'll also hear people pronounce it as bechef. It's a little show-offy because of a very complex grammatical structure thing in Hebrew about how you pronounce certain letters. But bekef or bechef both mean happily, no worries, with pleasure, it was nothing. They're all nice ways to reply to someone at the end of a conversation or after they've wished you toda. Okay, so this is a very quick, brief, but very concise wrap up of how you start a conversation and also how you can end a conversation, from what time of day it is, to asking how they're doing, to replying how they're doing and how you're doing, to wrapping it up. Okay, really nice ways to engage in a conversation. And we'll follow up this lesson with how you actually fill up the conversation with content besides just asking how each other are doing and seeing and wishing them the best. Okay, so I'm going to stop here. As I see, we have a bunch of questions, and let me start answering them. Okay. Chava asks, I've also learned ein ba'aya. What is the difference between that and ein badma? Ein ba'aya is another way to reply to someone, it was nothing, don't mention it. Ein ba'aya literally means it's no problem. But it's also a little bit more, just like these other ones, it's a little bit more brush off, right? We often hear in communications that people are averse to saying you're welcome, right? They don't want to take on the gratitude of someone else when they say thank you, so they try to brush it off in this sort of fake humility of saying en badma, en alma, alo davar, it was nothing. So the same thing with en baya, like it's no problem. It's not the most endearing way. It certainly means the same thing. It's just, again, not the most warming way to say to someone, you're welcome. But if that's your intention, by all means, use it. Miri asks a question that is actually better for a future lesson rather than here, which is a lot of people want to fix up people who are looking to find potential partners. What are the ways of asking if people are already committed and finding out politely what gender they would like to meet? That is a whole other topic, not the one here, but a great question. Miri, I would suggest sending that to Nefesh B'Nefesh so we can think about that for a future lesson, but a great one there. Thank you for that. Okay, any last questions? Any questions about anything else regarding Hebrew? No? Okay, so like I said, this lesson will be up on the on YouTube in the next few days, and along with all of our previous ones. You're welcome to watch it on demand, slow it down, speed it up, not watch it at all. Next week, we'll go over some small talk. We're going to take a break for a few weeks as we reconfigure some logistics and technical issues, and then we're going to come back in mid-January, hopefully with some of the topics that we were slated to cover in this latest round of classes and many more. So if you do have topic suggestions, please write them into Nefesh B'Nefesh directly. We'll be happy to follow up with them as much as we can. And until then, I will see you all next week for our last class of 2021. Please visit youtube.com for all of our previous lessons. And until then, toda rabah, as we just learned again. Thank you very much, and lihitraot. See you all very soon.